party, we like to party, party, party all night long. Party, party, we like to party, 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 never go home. Party, party, we like to party, party, party all night long. Party, party, we like to party, 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 never go home.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to episode 6 of Ball Talk. This evening, we are going to talk about the Oklahoma City Thunder's huge win over the Boston Celtics to extend their win streak to 15 games. And then we're going to touch on a little bit of OU men's basketball and women's basketball after a couple tough losses by them. And then we might even wrap it up talking about OU football, some portal additions. But yeah, Chris, let's start with the Thunder. How's it going, man?
Some positive, some positive OU stuff in the chamber coming your way tonight.
We have very few podcasts that present positive OU football talk, so brace yourself.
It might get a little difficult to hear all this positivity coming from me and Ben tonight, so just watch out.
But yeah, starting off, the Thunder have beaten the defending NBA champions, the Boston Celtics, 105-92 yesterday, in a game that was incredibly hyped up for a game that was on NBA TV. And it wasn't moved to the NBA TV channel until Friday afternoon when Twitter kind of realized that it wasn't on a national broadcast, which is just encapsulates the NBA right now perfectly. Just
exactly.
Don't get it. I get, it was the last weekend for the NFL before the playoffs. So there were some big games in pretty much every market in terms of playoff seeding, first round, draft position, some of the strategy there. The Patriots fired their coach because he won the game yesterday and cost the team the number 1 overall pick. It was a former Patriots player.
Out. He's out.
No Mayo in New England.
No, they're strictly unmayonnaise.
But we say all that. We started with the Thunder, and then we started talking NFL. So maybe that is why the NBA did not feel like they could combat that. But it was just great to see the Thunder come out on top of a game that I really did not think they were going to win going into it. It was obviously they had won 14 games in a row before. And the Celtics are fantastic. They had won 3 or 4 in a row. Their entire team was healthy. And so,
which is something you can't say for every team we've played during this streak. So that is nice.
Regardless of the streak, I think it's just across the NBA. It's very rare that you have a healthy team. And I think the coolest thing about all this is that the NBA is talking like the Thunder are full strength. And then, they watch that game and it looks like the Thunder are full strength. And then you realize that sitting behind the bench was the guy closest to Victor Wembanyama in terms of being Defensive Player of the Year in Chet Holmgren. And then next to him was Alex Caruso, who the last 2 years was first team all defense.
Yeah,
because
it's just scary.
Well, I say all that because
scary.
they gave up 27 points in the second half.
To a Boston team who lights it up from 3. And, the first quarter, they shot the ball really well from 3, I thought. Jaylen Brown was cooking. And then, after the game, they asked what they did to kind of divert, or the media asked Mark what they did to kind of stop Jaylen Brown. He said, well, we just put Lou Dort on him. And it's such a nice thing to have, to just be able to throw a player at some guy who's has 21 points in the first half and he doesn't score in the second half,
Yeah, I saw someone mention this. I think it was Steven Dolan on Twitter, who's a good Thunder follow. He heard once that Bill Belichick, who was the Patriots coach for so long, had a strategy of putting his best corner on the team's second best player, second best receiver. So then you knew he was locked up, and then the remaining defense could focus on stopping that number 1 wide receiver. And so it was kind of that concept in Oklahoma City yesterday, because Jason Tatum is their best player. He's one of the best players in the world. He'll be first team All-NBA again this year. And he played well, but Jaylen Brown was what was beating the Thunder in the first half. And I don't know if you remember that first half, it was just they were getting everything they wanted. they were getting to their spots. Their role players like Luke Cornett, who most people don't even know. He's a 7-footer for them. They were generating offense for him, and Jaylen Brown, just that like free throw line extended down to the block. It felt like he could get there every possession.
Yeah.
And so that I was like, we can't stop them. And they were shooting so well in the first quarter, really into halftime. They had 65 points at half and ended with 92. And so
they weren't shooting great from three. They did put up the Thunder and the Boston Celtics put up the same number of threes. Each shot 22, but Boston only made 6 and we only made 8. So they weren't shooting great from three, but neither were we. But they were shooting 51% from the field altogether.
I think I saw a stat from 2-point, like within the 3-point line, they were shooting like 92% late in the first half. So like some of them were contested shots, but you also had a 7'3" Kristaps Porzingis, who, although he's not the most physical player, he definitely presents a challenge to a Chetless Thunder team. Hartenstein's great, but he's a bit more of the bulky type. He can move his feet on the perimeter. He did a great job in the second half a couple of times switching on to Tatum, but that's a matchup that you just almost felt in that first half. It was like, if we only had Chet, this would be perfect. And combat a lot of the stuff at the rim. They were shooting so well. Before Chet got hurt, he was leading the NBA in field goal percentage against at the rim, even better than Wembanyama. And so that was something that was, I wouldn't say frustrating. It was almost just like just not even disappointing. It was just like, man.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like, if you look at the points in the paint, they had 34 points in the paint in the first half, which is sometimes some teams like final points in the paint. They were dominating. We were talking about it during the game, and you just kept saying their size is killing us. There was, if it wasn't Kristaps, it was Jason Tatum, who's 6'10", or how tall is he? 6'8" or whatever?
He's 6'10".
He's 6'10". So Jason Tatum 6'10", against, our biggest guard would be Jalen Williams, and he's only 6'6". So it's like there's a four, if it wasn't Jason Tatum, it was Al Horford, and Al Horford made 2 threes. So their size is a big reason they were ahead by 10 points at halftime.
Well, at any given time, Tatum's 6'10", so he's not a true 7-footer. But they had Tatum at 6'10", Porzingis at 7'3", and then Horford or Cornett at 7 feet. So the size mismatch, the Thunder, for the last couple of years, we've dealt with that, just being undersized to teams a ton. And it almost felt like we had gotten back to that, even though we had Hartenstein. Jay Will played well, I think, but he's still only like 6'8", 6'9". He's just a bit stronger and burly. But it's true.
Vibes guy.
Great vibes guy. A lot of booms. He had 2 big threes. I think something that was really cool that Mark said, there was a game so the Thunder played the Clippers on Thursday night, the night before the Knicks game, which we did the last pod afterwards. And Jay Will, number 6 for the Thunder, I think he missed like 6 or 7 threes. I know for sure he missed 5 in the first half. And they weren't like bad looks. He just wasn't hitting. And people were texting like, never, ever let that man shoot. Twitter was going crazy about it. But the team kept feeding him. At one point in that game, we were down 16 and ended up winning by double digits. But it was getting him those reps that then in the Knicks game, he hit 2. He had a big one yesterday against Boston in the second half that really kind of started that comeback. He had 2. Okay, yes, he had 2.
No, you're right. He was 1 for 2.
Yeah.
I thought he hit 2, though. He had a big one.
Well, the one he hit might as well have been worth 6 points, because it was whenever we were that second half was played at about 8 to 10 for most of the third quarter. And then he hit a 3, and you kind of sense the momentum turn a little bit. The defense cranked up. But he played great. But all that to say, their size just is so overwhelming. And I can't wait to see. We go to Boston on March 12th. Now, Chet's status for that, I have no idea. Yesterday was the 8-week mark for for his injury. So within the next week or two, we should be getting at least some kind of update about Chet's health and his return to play. He's been at the games. He was at every game this homestand. He's moving around very well. He's even like, if you watch on TV or at the game, after Shea gets announced in the starting lineup, he does this little like shimmy thing where he's like, looks like a boxer almost getting ready to go into the ring. And Chet's doing it with him, like even jumping around a little bit. And so you can tell he's close. And I think, knock on wood and everything, it seems to be his rehab's going according to plan, which is amazing.
Yeah, but they're going to be more than cautious bringing him back. So I mean, even if he's feeling good, right? Even if he's feeling good today and could potentially play, they're not going to bring him back for anything until he is 200% healthy. Because at this point, knock on wood again, it's all about making it to the playoffs healthy. So
and
I'll wrap him.
I mean, this team's on pace for 71 wins currently. Now,
right.
Obviously, with the 15-game win streak, that definitely skews that a little bit. I think you're looking at more like 65 wins, which would still set a Thunder record. The current record for most wins in a season by a Thunder team is 60. Now, we don't include the Seattle Supersonics records, even though we did move that team here. As soon as Seattle gets a franchise, they get all their stuff back. Their record is 64. So I think it'd be cool to beat them. But I think one thing, I say one thing, I think the most important thing is that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is the best player in the NBA right now in terms of impact, in terms of just, I don't even know if you can say wow, because, like this weekend, the Spurs and the Nuggets both played, and they had Wembanyama and Jokic. Jokic had just an unbelievable stat line. I don't have it in front of me. Wemby also did. But the way Shai plays, the way he gets his team involved, the way he plays both ends, that block on Tatum where J-Dub missed a three. It was like a late second or late in the shot clock three. Dub goes up, leaves it a little short. Celtics get the rebound, and they throw it ahead to Tatum. Shai does this chase down block that was very similar to, I wouldn't say similar to LeBron's in the finals, but the vibes were there.
I'll slow you down. Down.
Got a little ahead of myself there. Not to that extent, but still an impressive block that most of these top players in the NBA that tend to just put up stats, Luka Doncic isn't making that play. Jokic isn't making that play. He gets back, blocks Tatum, and then takes it the other way. Tatum's still behind him, gets the ball, throws an alley-oop to Hartenstein, who gets a foul and one. And that was just one of the more electric moments in Paycom I've ever experienced. And I think it was something that at least all the people voting for MVP were watching that game, even though it was on an NFL Sunday. And that's a moment that sticks and something they remember to cap off a 15-game winning streak, come back from at one point 13 down to the Celtics, the defending NBA champions, and deliver a win for a team that is playing better than anybody in the NBA right now.
Yeah, 100%. If you're not thinking Shai for MVP, like J-Dub says, you're not watching the games, so start watching the games. If you're just looking at stats, Jokic is phenomenal. He puts up stats every night. Assists, rebounds, points, does it all. But if you're not watching the games, you're not seeing how important Shai is to the team and how smooth he looks. Based on eye test alone, I'd give it to Shai. But again, this is a very biased podcast, so.
And most of the time, your eye is on the Thunder. So
right, I do get around and I try to watch, with the NBA League Pass, watch some games every night just to see what's going on, and it's just smoother in Oklahoma City.
I heard today, speaking of Jokic, phenomenal player. Obviously, he's won 3 MVPs, and it wouldn't shock me if he wins another one in his career. I hope it's not this year. Finals MVP, took Denver to a championship. In the 2 games against the Spurs, they played a home and home on Saturday and Sunday, or Friday and Saturday. So they played in Denver on Friday night and played in San Antonio on Saturday. And in that game, Jokic attempted at least 37 field goal attempts each game, which is the first time I think I heard since like Kobe did it whenever he was like, I don't pass. And so Shea last night took 23 shots, and he wasn't even overly efficient. He was 11 of 23, 3 of 6 from 3, 11 rebounds, 6 assists. If Shea shot 37 times, he'd score 60.
That's putting it lightly. He would score and I would let him shoot that many times, and I'm sure that's what the Nuggets fans are saying. Like they would let Jokic shoot every time. When you have a player of the caliber of Jokic or Shea, you would let them shoot every time. But you're right. With Shea's efficiency and his ability to get by anybody, he would score 60 points.
And Jokic has to. Jokic has to right now because the Nuggets surrounding him are not the Nuggets that won a championship 2 years ago or last year. They lost Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. There's a couple other pieces from their team that Bruce Brown was a big one from their championship team. The talent around him forces him to be more of a scoring threat. Obviously, he's still getting triple doubles. He's getting assists, but that's just because of the gravity. He's having to carry so much more of the scoring that, I mean, Denver right now, I think they're fourth in the West at 20-14. Jokic is amazing. That's the hardest part about all of this. It's belittling one person to make your case better. Shea and Jokic are having the two best seasons in the NBA, bar none. Like by far, Giannis isn't up there. Luka's been hurt. LeBron and Steph, they're all older. It is Jokic and SGA. And with what the Thunder are doing, what they're on pace to do, 71 games. I mean, Chet's going to come back. Let's say hypothetically he comes back after the All-Star break, which is late February, like we mentioned earlier. Let's say he has March and April. That's, 45 days. I'd have to go back. I think it's probably a little less than 20 games left in the season. They play about 15 a month, and April isn't a full month. The 1 seed might be locked up by then. I don't think that's crazy. This is a biased podcast, but they have a 7.5 game lead right now in the West, which is the same distance of, at least going into the night. The Suns have already played tonight, so this changed. But going into tonight, the gap from the Thunder at the 1 seed and the Rockets at the 2 seed was 7.5. The gap from the Rockets to the 12th seeded Suns was 7.5. I mean, it's unbelievable. And I think one thing, go ahead.
You want to talk about insane? They have that 7.5 game lead, and currently on Tankathon, they have the 23rd strongest schedule left. So they have in the grand scheme of the NBA, a really weak schedule coming up to continue and build on that impressive 7-game lead. So I don't think you're crazy at all to think that it's going to be locked up. Maybe even before, we really see a full Chet, which would be kind of cool. Like if you could just kind of set Chet up as, he's going to play 15 minutes a night and there's no really worry about losing seeding or,
the consequences of the game really would not change anything.
Besides maybe some bettors would be unhappy. But you could kind of ease Chet back into, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, back up to, 30 to 40 minutes where he would probably play in the not in the, got ahead of myself.
Hopefully. Whoa.
In the playoffs.
Both of us are a little high on life tonight, I guess.
I mean, 15-game winning streak, just defeated the second or the third, fourth, and fifth strength, or what is it called? I lost my train of thought.
Strongest teams in the East?
Strongest teams in the league in this 15-game win streak, with a chance to extend it against the second strongest team in the league behind the Thunder. So there's a lot to be excited about in Oklahoma City. And it's not just the Maps project.
Which is a huge reason why we're here. So shout out Maps. Didn't see that coming on tonight's pod. There are 2 things I want to touch on before we move on to some other things. First, we just talked about how the Thunder are running away with the West, 7.5 game lead. And in that situation, a lot of times you'll see that team that separated so much get a second all-star. And the first 10 games of the year, it was pretty obvious Chet was going to make it regardless. He's no longer eligible. In the NBA, there's a 65 game rule. Well, I guess not for all-star. I don't know how that calculates because it's earlier in the year, but at least for like rewards, award season and MVP and all NBA selections, you have to play 65 games. Chet's missed too many games to be a part of anything. Jalen Williams, what he did, especially when we were small after those first, what was it, 4 or 5 games between Chet's injury and Hartenstein coming back.
I think it was like 2 weeks, yeah.
Yeah. What he did in those games and then what he does for this team is so underappreciated. And I've been on this podcast in the past, especially after the Bucks game that didn't count. Maybe not calling him out, but just noticing that he maybe doesn't show up in big games like you want your second best player to.
Imploring him to show up in big games.
I believe in him. He didn't shoot great last night. He only had 10 points, but he had 6 rebounds, 5 assists. He plays incredible defense. And him, Case and Wallace, Lou Dort, and then you have Shea and Hartenstein at least out of the starting lineup, and that doesn't include Caruso when he comes back, all those guys off the bench. What Dub is doing for this team without even scoring the ball, and a lot of it is percentages, and hopefully we see that swing back. I still believe we will. He's averaging over 20 a game, even with this kind of downturn. He's at 20 points a game, 5 rebounds, 5 assists, 25-5, which is a great mark to hit. It's a mark that on a team like this, I think should make the All-Star game. I think he will definitely get consideration. But I also just think if the Thunder are this good, I don't know how you don't give us a second All-Star.
Well, like we've talked about in the past, the league doesn't know how to market the Thunder. They don't know how to market young teams. They don't know how to market teams year to year. They know how to market players. They know how to market Steph. They know how to market LeBron. They know how to market, I guess, Luka. They don't know how to market good teams, good young players, unless you have an unworldly level skill like Wemby or LeBron. And so I think, sadly, and Steph's had a good year and LeBron's have a good year, but like Steph will get in automatically just because he is one of the bigger names in basketball. And guys like that will take up roster spots in the NBA All-Star game when it might go to a more, not, I wouldn't say more deserving player, but a different player, you know?
Yeah. From my understanding is that in terms of players to make the All-Star game this year, what would have to happen there, as you mentioned, are those select few that are locks every year: LeBron, Steph, Shea, Jokic, etc. You could throw Wemby is going to make it. Anthony Edwards is going to make it. Basically, it comes down to the Rockets and the Grizzlies. They have, well, what are they? Yeah, Rockets are second in the West. Grizzlies are third. Ja Morant has been hurt a lot. The Grizzlies stud point guard. Houston, there's really not, like, it's a huge struggle for Houston in the last couple of years of like figuring out who the guy is. So there's like, people think it's their center, Alperen Sengun. Jalen Green was their second overall pick in 2021, who's been kind of really hot and really cold. So there's no obvious choice between Houston and Memphis. Memphis has Jaren Jackson Jr., who I think is a phenomenal player, but that I think will tell a lot. If any of those players gain traction and are able to steal an all-star bid. But right now you see a lot of the Thunder pushing like, hey, vote for Shea, vote for Dub. Jalen Dub had a great initial turnout in the fan vote. The fan vote really only determines starters. And then everything else after that is like a percentage breakdown of media versus fan vote and then coaches and players.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so Dub already being 7th in the front court, I think is great, especially as we've mentioned, the exposure hasn't been there. So I hope he gets it. I really do. I know he will be an all-star in his career, but with a team this good, obviously there's a lot of games left between now and the all-star break. A couple big ones coming up. I just want to see him make it. He's had a great year. He's not shooting it as well as he has in the past. And I mean, the day that Jalen Williams just kind of breaks out and gets back to that 25 to 30 point range instead of that like 15 to 22, I don't know how you beat this Thunder team with how they're playing defense right now. So um, that's my little thought on Jalen Williams making the All-Star game. And then
Well, I'd like to
lastly,
pull that thread of the defense a little bit. Because when you
Okay.
talk about that defense, you're right. If he starts scoring, how do you beat this team? Because they're able to, I mean, the past 3 games, they've been able to ratchet up their defense in the third quarter and completely flip the script of each game. So if you also have your second best player, not named Chet Holmgren, scoring 25 points a game, and then you get continual efficiency from the bench guys, who beats this team? You're totally right. I just wanted to agree with you.
I appreciate it. And then also the worry about, everyone thinks that, you have Shea as obviously the first best player on the team or your best player. And then it's always that second player in the playoffs that tends to make or break. Last year, Dub, as we mentioned, didn't have a great showing against the Mavs. He had some moments, but it was his second year. He's still young as a third-year player. He came in as a junior, so he is a little older compared to other players in his class. But in terms of experience and age, he definitely still has time to grow. But especially looking back at what Chet was doing in those first 10 games, I don't think Dub is your second best player that you have to worry about producing at that in the playoffs. I think it's definitely Chet if he's healthy. So I'm not as worried about that as some might be. And what they bring and how they complement each other as the second and third best players, I think creates the perfect second option.
Well, I also think, not to digress into what happened last year, but I think that he might have been playing out of position for defense, right? He might have been playing just somebody a little too, a little big. We've seen him this year play center, and he played really well. He played really hard, but you did see games after the initial, few that it was a struggle defensively to hold those centers back. And I think, adding Hartenstein and having the ability to throw another center out and not make Jalen guard this bigger, rougher guy has the potential to kind of make his game easier. So
he also has, going back to last year in those first 10 games, you've seen it progressing this year with Hartenstein, but the chemistry that he has with Chet that's already built in. Obviously, there'll be some rust when he comes back, but they play off each other so well, especially usually they are starting that second quarter together.
Right.
When Shea's on the bench, which is a huge point of contention right now in terms of where are the holes for the Thunder. And it's the scoring when Shea isn't on the court. And so I think, again, hopefully he comes back healthy. I know with the hip and everything and his body type, you don't know. Things seem to be going well from everything I've heard and read. I'm not a doctor. I feel very good about Chet coming back and being able to return to his form. But we just have to get there. Like it comes back to, I mean, I can't wait for the update on Chet. And the second point, go ahead.
I know you're listening to this, and I have a Instagram post idea for you when you finally come back. Your first game back.
Write this down, Chet.
Write this down. I'll give you a second, get a pen and paper. Okay, you got it? Good.
He's back, yeah.
So, first game back, whatever happens, maybe the first win. Maybe save it for the first win. Your caption, the Thunder are big caption and big Instagram folks. His caption needs to read, "Hip, hip, hooray." That's simple. That's as simple as your Instagram caption needs to be, Chet.
Short and sweet. Yep, because Chris has mad Instagram caption game. So definitely...
I haven't posted on Instagram in 6 years.
Because you don't have to. You already understand it.
That's right.
But we're talking about all this. The Thunder obviously are the favorites in the West right now. They have the second best odds to win the finals behind the Boston Celtics, and that gap has shrunk substantially. Even before that Celtics game, the Thunder were really starting to creep up in terms of what bettors are thinking in terms of who's going to win the finals. And the last point I want to make on the Thunder before we move on to some OU talk. I texted you and my brother this after game 1 of the Mavs series last year. And it was probably more true then. But I said, these are the good old days. And I say that now because this team is 30-5. They've won 15 games in a row. It's a franchise record. You have arguably the best player in the league. The team is so much fun to cheer for, whether you're in the stadium or watching from home. They're fun to track off the court. There's probably 29 other teams in this league that wish they were us, outside of maybe the Celtics, especially with the long-term potential of the draft picks that we have. And so I just want to tell Thunder fans, there is pressure to win this year, but this is the year that, as long as we don't go out in the first or second round, if you get to a Western Conference Finals, the Western Conference Finals almost feels like a disappointment at this point. But if you don't win a championship this year, it's not the end of the world. You're running this team back next year with more draft picks. You have Nikola Topic coming back, who was the lottery pick from this year. After this year, if they do not win a championship, the pressure to win every year will make watching these games harder and harder. Every loss is going to feel worse. Every win probably doesn't feel as good because you expect it more. You expect to win now, but it's just fun. And if you remember back to when Katie and Russ were here, the climb to the mountaintop was awesome. When they took the Lakers to 6 games, got the standing ovation, their first time they exited from the playoffs from Loud City, the environment there, you had making the finals with Harden. And even after trading Harden that year after, they were the best team in the NBA. They were on track to win a championship before Patrick Beverley took out Russ's knee. We are not fans of Patrick Beverley on this pod. That was fun. That was when it was fun. And then the years leading up to Kevin Durant's free agency, the tension behind every season and thinking oh my gosh, we have to win a championship. We're going to waste this. And we did technically, but I just want to say to as I said, say to Thunder fans, this is the part of the journey that is the most fun until you win a championship. So really embrace it. They play the Cavaliers Wednesday night. As you mentioned, they're ranked as probably the second best net rating in the league. And then they go to Madison Square Garden on Friday. This win streak is going to end. They're not going to win every game the rest of the year. You can bet on that on an app. I looked at it today. But this is fun. This is fun. Enjoy it. I don't even think you need to trade for Cam Johnson. This team just gels so well together. And that's all I want to say on it. A little bit of a ramble, but I want to make that point.
Fans, cheer up. Have a good time. Quit complaining. You don't need to trade for Cam Johnson. Get the earwax out of your ears and listen to my boy. That's all I have to say.
I appreciate the backup. And we had a little bit of technical difficulty there. So hopefully we get that worked out in post edit. But yeah, Thunder fans, enjoy the ride. Don't worry about Cam Johnson. This team is already good. I don't know how you could want to change up this situation.
So you want to bring in a player that could potentially shoot threes and drive to the basket and play good defense? Oh, what about Chet Holmgren? How's that sound?
Yeah.
Just let the team breathe. Let them mature together, because that's, much like OU football and their drive to develop talent in a small market like Oklahoma City. You have to develop talent, and you have to, build through the draft, and just trades and free agencies don't happen all that often. So
yeah, I'm excited for these next couple games. We said last week on the pod that the stretch of basketball that the Thunder are about to play would be very fun. I did not know it would be this fun in terms of extending this win streak out. But it continues with the Cavs Wednesday night and the Knicks Friday. And then they have a couple games in between against some bottom feeders in the East. But then they come home and play the Cavs again on the 16th. So a lot of good basketball still ahead.
Yeah. Do you want to go ahead and give your prediction for the Cavs game?
I think they lose a close one.
Oh, don't do it. All right. I'll be biased. I think the Thunder win by 15. I think Shea scores 40. Dub scores 30. Kaysen Wallace hits 4 threes.
If that happens, I'm going to post this podcast everywhere. I'm going to send it to Mark Dagnall. I'm going to find his address, email address, whatever. Send him the file and say, come on the podcast.
You'd lose your co-host because he'd want me to come be a coach.
And then I could bring you back on and I'd get some insider knowledge. It might be what's best for the pod.
That's right. All right, Mark, I know you're listening.
Yeah, I don't even know if he actually. I do know he's on Twitter, but he has a burner of some type. He's confirmed before.
Speaking of Mark, my favorite thing is, this is just a really quick aside. There is a video that someone on Twitter posts every time he wins a challenge. It's my favorite thing to watch. It's just him like standing silently, and they just play some like really fun music behind it. It's really good.
Well, he's good at challenges. So, but yeah, there's your Thunder talk for the evening. I feel bad that I wasn't a bit more biased in my prediction for the Cavs because I kind of have a feeling they might win. But I also know this run has to come to an end at some point.
Yeah, my thought is that, I don't even think we lose to the Knicks.
But Knicks are about to lose their third game in a row. So,
oh, well, we ended their streak and maybe ended their locker room.
You never know. But yeah, Thunder up. There's your Thunder talk for the evening. We're going to move on. We're just going to touch on some OU basketball stuff. They no longer are undefeated. They lost to the Alabama Crimson Tide by roughly infinity points on Saturday.
Roughly.
Give or take a couple infinities.
Yeah.
Alabama's very good, so I have no problem with them losing. But as we were discussing before we hopped on here, it's like clockwork for Oklahoma basketball under Porter Moser. Whatever I say it, I always say it wrong. Play really great non-conference. I think they've won like a preseason invitational every year he's been here. And then they get to conference play and just fall apart.
Yeah, to me, it doesn't even feel like a Porter Moser problem. It feels like an OU problem because even I feel like even before Porter Moser, when we had Trae Young and Kruger, it felt like you said, clockwork, that we would do pretty well. I remember when Trae Young was here, we won like 11. We won our first 11 games or whatever.
We got up to 4th in the country.
Yeah,
we ranked 4th in the country.
Trae Young was shooting the lights out of the ball, not passing to his teammates, but he got us up to 4th in the country. But then in conference play, we just couldn't hang with the big boys. And back then, the Big 12 was the best conference, and I think now the SEC is close to the best conference. So
Big 12 and SEC are pretty neck and neck. I would put the SEC ahead a little bit this year, but they're definitely the best two. And I think you didn't even make this point, but once they get to playing the big boys, you meant that as like a figure of speech. I take it as like literal. We don't have any interior presence. Sam Godwin is a really fun, scrappy story, but he's not. You don't even need dominant big men, but you need like a bit more mass, size. Go get a rebound. Rebounding is such an issue for this team, and next year they do have like a 4-star center committed. And so that was, I remember when he committed, it was like, oh my gosh, Porter does know how to recruit centers. Because if you remember, he had Tanner Groves to start, which we were all super excited for because he dropped like 35 points on Kansas in the NCAA tournament the year before he came.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
him and his brother. But that's just such an issue with this team. You have to um, you have to be able to rebound in conference play. Um,
I would
but
say go get one of the big boys from the football team, O line or D line, but I'm not sure they have the big enough size.
yeah, I mean, at this point, I have no idea what would work. Um, they still have opportunities. They have a great team. It's a fun team. Sometimes let me say this. They have a player who we've talked about before in Jeremiah Fears. He hit the game winner against Michigan in the Jumpman Invitational. He's a freshman. In the latest Bleacher Report mock draft by Jonathan Wasserman, who's pretty in touch, I guess, with the NBA draft circle, they had him going top 5, which typically doesn't happen from a basketball player at OU. Usually it's a football player. But he's fun to watch, still worth going and watching. They play the Texas A&M Aggies on Wednesday night, who just beat the snot out of the Texas Longhorns this past weekend. They have a good basketball team. They'll be at the Lloyd Noble Center Wednesday night at 8.
10th in the country.
Yep. But late night start. My wife and I were thinking about going, but then we saw the tip-off time and that it was in Norman. We won't be making that trip. I will be watching. I guess it works out because it'll be the Thunder tip off at 6:30, and then OU basketball tips off at 8. So there's a little double feature for you Oklahoma City Thunder and Oklahoma Sooner basketball fans.
Yeah.
Women's team, they won. To start off, they lost to the Texas Longhorns at home last week in a great game. Everything I saw, a lot of turnovers and a lot of fouls. Which seems par for the course. But then they bounced back and went to Tennessee, who was undefeated at the time, ranked. Almost blew like a 19-point lead, but held on one by one. They're fun to watch too. So hopefully these two teams can kind of keep it going and see if they can gain some momentum. And hopefully, I mean, the women's team's made the tournament in the past, but they should get a pretty high seed. And the men's team, hopefully, they kind of
make it this year.
Flip a switch and do what Porter just hasn't been doing. But yeah, Chris, anything else you want to talk about basketball-wise before we touch on some football real quick?
Not to like call for Porter Moser's job, because I'm definitely not. But what does it take to get him out of his seat? You know what I mean? What does it take?
Was he not the coach next week? Next year?
Not yet. What is it next year? What does he have to do?
He has to make the
save his job. But does he have to go far? Do you think he has to reach the second weekend?
I think Joe has enough problems on the football field. As long as there's some semblance of success and growth in the program, he's not going to touch a basketball team for the next year or two.
I think that's a pretty good point. Yeah, he can't be paying 2 buyouts.
But if he doesn't make the tournament, you're searching for a new basketball coach next year. It would be 4 years in a row without making the tournament.
Oh, really? It's been that long?
Yep.
Is that he did his first season and then hasn't made the last 3?
No, is this his 4th year?
I don't know. You were the one who said 3 years.
Let me see. I'll look that up real quick. I know for sure we haven't made it in 3 years. And I think
this has got to be his 3rd year. Maybe we didn't make it with Kruger the last year? With old Lonnie? You don't think people call him Lonnie, do you?
I doubt
it. Maybe people closest to him.
Maybe. I know it's not me. So
that's why I call him Lon.
He got to OU in 2021.
So 4 years ago.
Yep. So yeah, he's got to make the tournament.
Or his first season 2022.
21, 22.
Oh, okay.
So
yeah, he's got to make the tournament. Yep.
Yeah, this is 4th year.
Could be a lot.
Last year we made the tournament was Lon's last year.
Oh, so he's never made the tournament for OU?
Nope.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
So we'll see what happens. But lastly, last little bit for this evening, Oklahoma football, as we kind of mentioned at the start of this, has been getting some good news, which I know that is kind of unheard of recently. Um, in the last 72-ish hours, I guess probably closer to 48, they've had two pretty big transfer portal additions, starting off with Marvin Jones Jr., who, if you remember, he was on the verge of committing to Oklahoma the last class that Lincoln Riley was a part of. He was very close with the defensive line coach at the time, Jamar Kane, who moved on to LSU after Lincoln left and is now coaching the Broncos defensive line, who he's still with Nick Bonito, who has had a fantastic year. But Marvin Jones Jr. was going to commit. All that stuff happened. He committed to Georgia. He was there for 2 years and then transferred to Florida State, where his dad was a very successful college football player for the Seminoles. He played last year, and then he has 1 year of eligibility left with a red shirt. So he'll play edge. I think he'll probably start opposite of the gentleman who announced today that he is coming back officially, R. Mason Thomas, who was probably going to be a day 2 draft pick, second, third round this year. But he's coming back. He had 9 sacks last year, which, I mean, there were games that he just took over.
Oh, so, the law firm. That was my favorite call by the boys in the booth last year, calling him the law firm.
He had a couple huge plays against Alabama. He hit the quarterback to get the last interception to seal that win. He had 3 sacks in the fourth quarter against Tulane to help seal that, along with a forced fumble and a fumble recovery on the same play. He just has a motor that is unmatched. And so getting him back, pairing him up with Marvin Jones Jr. on the other side, has the potential to be one of the better defensive end pass rushing duos in the country next year.
A part of me loves that. And I know we've talked about it before that Brent has to win this year. He has to perform well overall, not just on the defensive side. He has to be a good head coach and win games, right? I want to see the 2 defensive linemen, the defensive ends that we've recruited the last 2 years in
OJ.
Yeah, and then the guy we had last year too,
Danny Okoye.
Yeah, I want to see them on the field, but I'm sure we will, and I'm sure it'll be different than we thought at the start of the year. But I'd like to see some development from those guys as well.
It needs to happen. We need to show development there. R. Mason Thomas has been a great story, but we've relied so much on transfers the last couple of years. Ethan Downs has played great, but he's not really a guy that gets after the passer. He's almost better as like a defensive tackle, but he was playing defensive end in terms of taking up space. Great against the run, but not a ton of sacks, at least not where he beat the guy and went and got a quick sack. It was more so like a coverage sack that he would get. But those 2 should be great. It's so interesting to me. We talked about it a couple pods ago whenever Zach Alley had left. But the retention of this defensive side of the ball for this team is kind of crazy. I mean, obviously, they played really well last year. It was actually fun to watch us play defense, especially compared to the offense. Low bar, but still. But you have R. Mason Thomas coming back, Kip Lewis coming back. Really, there hasn't been a transfer outside of Lewis Carter, who would have been a backup linebacker. But the third piece of news that kind of helps offset that is that the Sooners got a commit in the portal today from Kendall Daniels, who was at Oklahoma State. He was a freshman All-American his freshman year. He's coming in as a senior. He's from Beggs, Oklahoma. But he'll play the cheetah, I think, for us.
I'm sure OSU was begging him to stay.
Well, the thing is, a lot of my OSU friends that I've talked to since that news was dropped is that they weren't too upset he left.
Really? Okay, well, that doesn't make me feel good.
He has a ton of talent. He obviously was freshman All-American. He made a lot of big plays that year. but they said he never really progressed past that. And he exhibited a lot of lazy habits. He would like give up on plays. You would just see guys run by him. This is an OSU fan's perspective on this, and from what I've heard, it's not that crazy. Like I don't think they're like being Homer and trying to get OU to not be as into it as they should be. Um, the hope is he just needed to change the scenery. He comes in. They kind of moved him around between linebacker and safety, which maybe kind of took away some of that. But he has the perfect build for the cheetah position that Brent has. So I'm pretty excited about it, mainly because there's not a lot to get excited about. So you might as well find something.
Yeah. My only other thing about the defensive transfers, I wish they were on the offense. I wish they were on the offensive side of the ball. I wish we had a big wide receiver recruit or, a big offensive line transfer. I just wish this big OU news was on the offensive side of the ball and not the defensive side of the ball. Just because,
You
like
got
you
Mateer,
said,
but that was it.
just because you said we are retaining a lot of the defense, and on the offense is where we really, really struggled. So, I mean,
It's going to be interesting.
Having a quarterback who, I mean, we saw it Baker's first year, who can make up, and you see it with Caleb Williams at USC, 2 years ago. He was running around making all sorts of plays. Having a quarterback of that caliber can win you a lot of games in college football, where offense is king. So, getting that John Mateer is probably the best thing we could have hoped for, but having some playmakers on the outside would have been nice, or on the inside.
I don't disagree. It's going to have to be somebody steps up that you don't see coming. They did get a recruit from University of California. His name's Josiah Martin, and he was a kind of a late bloomer that people tend to be excited about. He actually played at Denton Guyer with, brace yourself, Jackson Arnold. But he was one of his best receivers. Maybe it's he made him look great, look like a 5-star. So hopefully he comes in and does that here.
Wow, I like.
You heard it here first.
I like that take. Let's run with that.
But yeah, really, as we said, the good news all on the defensive side. But they got to find balance. They have to. I mean, the defense is going to be really, really good next year. And even though you're losing Danny Stutzman and Billy Bowman, I think it's going to take a step forward again. You have R. Mason Thomas coming back. You have to see, as you mentioned, development out of the younger defensive ends. That just feels like a must. If you're not doing that in the SEC, you're not going to play winning football.
And out of David Stone and Jared, or what's his name, Jared Jackson,
Jaden
Jackson.
Yeah, he was playing like a freshman All-American. I mean, he was a freshman All-American this season. The linebacker crew with Kobe McKenzie and Kip, and
seen a lot of development there. You've seen a lot of development in the DBs and the safeties. So you feel good about the defense on the back end. You just want to see those defensive ends progress and become, who they've been projected to be. And
we definitely need development on from our linebacker recruiting has not been great of late, but especially losing Lewis Carter, who was a good depth piece. I don't think he's just like a huge loss by any means, but he definitely had talent. He committed to Central Florida. One guy, I don't know how many more guys OU's going to take, but Alabama did have a freshman enter the portal. His name's Sterling Dixon, but he's been in contact with OU. He's somebody to, I guess, keep an eye on
what position
as a potential
does he
play? Linebacker.
Tell the people he plays linebacker.
Yep.
Okay.
So he's somebody to be on the lookout. Let me see. I was trying to get his transfer portal ranking, but yeah, I mean, he was a football player at the University of Alabama. At this point, I mean, it is the defensive side of the ball, so I trust that a little bit more. But beggars can't be choosers right now with the University of Oklahoma football team.
I guess, we said there would be a lot of positive talk about OU football, and I think we did not deliver.
It might be as positive as it could be.
That's true. That's definitely true. After the season we had, to say that I think our defense is going to get better, and I think at this point we just have to trust Ben Arbuckle. and understand that whatever happens is either going to be really good, like we're going to love what we see from the offense, from the defense, and it's really going to flow and we're going to win a lot of games, or you're going to see it, kind of tank again, and there'll be hope at the end of the season regardless, which is sort of a pessimistic view because we either fire Brent Venables and we have hope that a new coach can come in and kind of build through the transfer portal, which we've seen done with TCU and Indiana, or Brent Venables turns the program offense around and shows us what the team can be. So there's hope at the end of the season regardless. So keep your heads up.
This entire thing comes down to if Ben Arbuckle can save this offense. If that doesn't happen this year, nothing else matters.
Thunder basketball matters.
And that's all that matters in my life right now. That and my wife, who I love very much. Shout out Bailey. But looking forward to this week. Obviously, as we mentioned, the Thunder have a couple big games coming up. OU football's kind of about to hit the kind of dead period. Transfer portal is going to wrap up. Hopefully, Chris and I can get to Norman to catch a basketball game. Hopefully, they kind of buck the trend that Porter's been a part of the last couple years. But yeah, let's just focus on the Thunder, people. What a time to be alive. Start playing in the parade route, as I said last time. Chris, anything else before we hop off tonight?
No. I'm just excited about the Thunder. And I'll be wearing bells and whistles at the parade. So keep your eyes out.
I haven't picked my outfit yet, but it'll be something.
Being on the float.
Fair.
I think as a new assistant coach, I might get on the float.
We'll see what Mark wants you to do. But appreciate everybody. We'll be back with you sometime later this week. We'll catch you all next time. See ya.
All night long, party, we like to party, all night long. Party, we like to party, never go home. Party, we like to party, all night long. Party, we like to party, never